it's a great way to just enhance every other channel. And so, the time is right now for brand ambassadors and micro influencers. Social is so important. Paid traffic is not going anywhere. Be super clear about that. But also, diversify and enhance, these established channels that you have, and just layer on this layer that's an enabling layer that can touch almost everything.
Hello and welcome to DTC Deep Dive. I think we're going to call it Deep Dive. We're just explaining to Alan how on the DTC podcast, we normally interview brand owners. We talk about their specific challenges, bringing brands to market. But we've started to build this community through our newsletter and through our content of other amazing owners, other amazing marketers who have kind of joined us. And one of the questions that we had from our audience recently was just, let's talk more about ambassadors. I think ambassadors are just such a critical area for people right now, especially with some of the things, OS, some of the other, the shifting landscape of traffic and data experiencing right now really behooves people to build amazing brands that are worthy of amassing armies of ambassadors who can help stabilize their marketing and really enrich that brand experience. And so reached out to Alan, who's one of our subscribers. Alan, I should have asked this before we were recording, but how do we pronounce your last name?
VanToai.
VanToai.
Yeah.
Alan VanToai. And mine, for anyone who's wondering, it is Dick. It's Dick.
All right.
So welcome to DDC, Alan. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing awesome. Thank you for hosting me. And just from the top, Eric, I have a shout out from a mutual friend of ours who found out that I was coming on your show. Our friend, Greg Elfrink.
Oh,
he said, that
guy. He's the best.
And he said to tell you that you should have him on his podcast. And if you do, you'll experience what he experienced in Colombia.
Oh,
and
well,
I don't know what this means, but he also said to say that the basilisk is real.
Oh my goodness. Yes. We really can't get into the basilisk because it would take everyone down. It's literally the depressing theory in the world. Before we go further, I also have to say hello to KG, the voice behind the DTC newsletter, and also just a razor sharp market. So let's dive into ambassador marketing.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, how you got into, and what you recognize as the biggest opportunity in the space.
Yeah, happy to. So I run a product called Crewfire, crewfire.com. It's a brand ambassador and some people say micro influencer marketing platform, and it helps brands drive more referral sales, user generated content, engagement, and shares on social media. And it does that by helping them turn their customers and their audience into their army of brand ambassadors and micro influencers. And just like a real quick story on like how this unfolded. I originally started it back in 2016. And at the time it was just like a really easy way for brands to get their customers to share content that they create, and they could do that in exchange for rewards. Around the same time, I also had another business that was in the crypto space. It was like a crypto community platform. And I'm sure you guys remember like 2017, I mean, crypto just kind of went crazy. So Crewfire, that's a story for another day, but the major learning from that business, and I managed the crypto community business for the next 3 years, and Crewfire just sat as this simple tool. When I sold that crypto community business earlier this year, I looked back at Crewfire and I realized that the community aspects that were from that crypto business were missing from all other ambassador platforms in the space today. And so this year it's been just this flurry of activity, investing in Crewfire, growing it. And we actually this week we're launching Crewfire 2.0, which is built in with all these new powerful tools for these brands, and centering around this concept and this notion of the importance of your ambassador program as a community that can connect with one another. And so, yeah, that's what we do now. And that's how it came about.
Dive in on what those key, we don't have to go deep into the crypto piece.
Yeah,
but I imagine, creating hype around these launches
Yeah.
was hugely important, and tangible, real hype, real social people, lending their own credibility to these things. So talk about exactly what missing from Ambassador was present in that crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. You know, what we saw is that if you look at every other ambassador, or you can even zoom out a little bit more broadly and look at influencer or referral or loyalty programs. I mean, if you squint, everything that I just mentioned, they're in a sense, they have similarities, right? They're incentivizing and motivating people who aren't part of your core team to help grow your business just in different ways. And then you're rewarding them in slightly different ways, either with points and rewards or referrals, or sorry, referral commissions. And what all of those other platforms are missing, all of those other platforms look pretty similar. Like the ambassador or the influencer or the customer, they sign up and they see a list of activities that they could perform, and then they can perform those activities and get rewards. It's a very transactional experience. It's just like, and frankly, it's like an economic transaction, and it's isolating. You know, there's no community component. I can't connect with other people through that platform. I can't see if other people are creating other content for the brand. I can't see if people are earning points and commissions. It's really just this like isolated transactional experience. And what we saw in the crypto community that was doing great is these crypto projects and these crypto community members, they were in like group chats, like in an app called Telegram, and they were all taking part in raising the platform, whether it's the token or the blockchain, together. And we were making relationships, we were building connections, we were seeing the success that other people were having. And that was like the primary and key insight that we took back to like the world of direct to consumer and the world of like e-commerce brands. These ambassadors, and we can go on, and we will, I'm sure, go into the power of brand ambassadors for brands. But what we saw missing from other platforms was this aspect of community, because these are all friends who haven't met yet. They're connected to your brand in some way. And then even a step further, they're not just connected with your brand, they've signed up and opted in to becoming an ambassador. Why not let them connect with one another, embedding the program and your brand in their relationships, and making the entire thing, I mean, it's a win-win all around. They get new friends and connections. The brand gets this like really deeper emotional connection, instead of just this transactional economic, pleasure doing business with you kind of thing. So, yeah, I hope that kind of like illustrates like the lessons learned from crypto and how we're applying it to brands.
Totally does.
Totally. That's awesome. And I'd love to go back. I noticed that you, early on, you worked at Red Bull, and Yelp, but, Red Bull is obviously a powerhouse brand. I'd love to hear, if you, like, what you took away from that experience, and if it influences what you're doing today.
Yeah. Red Bull was incredible. I mean, I was a student brand manager in college for 3 years. And I mean, Red Bull, there's no cooler job than to be the guy, handing out the samples for Red Bull. And we got to leverage that to make connections with all the movers and shakers on campus, whether that's fraternity and sorority leaders, whether that's the student government association, like hosting events and stuff. And I got to be the point of contact for them when they were planning an event and they needed sample product, or they needed, wigwams and coolers and, turf and bean bags, and they could come through me for that. One of the, I'm just going to harp on it. One of the key components to that program, valuable for me, was the community. They had an internal message board system called Red Bull U. And not only was it a message board where we would share best practices and talk about what's working, and whenever we would do these installations or small fires, as they call it internally, we would share those reports. But, and this was so cool, especially as a college student, there was a directory of all the other ambassadors, not just in the country, but around the world. So I would go to New York City. I would go to Denver, Colorado for Red Rock shows. I went to London one time, and I was outside O2 Wireless Festival, and I saw that there was a Red Bull installation, and I was able to look up the local ambassadors and hit them up and say, hey, my name's Alan. I'm an SBM from the DC area. Like, would love to connect with you, grab coffee, get, network a little bit. And then also, by the way, my friends and I are hosting a party. Like, could we get some product? And they're like, hell yeah. And they'd hook it up. And so, yeah, like that community component, it really does. And now I'm like, lifetime Red Bull, super fan. So there's no, that brand and that experience has embedded the business and the brand in my life, that it's a win-win all around. Yeah.
Very cool. They're one of those brands. They've been making some waves recently, I think, with some of their politics recently. But I just respect any brand that can kind of really do things so much on their own terms.
Yeah.
And I think Red Bull is like the primary example of that. Whether it's like going to the stratosphere or whatever they did a couple of years ago when they did that huge drop, like they're just playing the game on their terms fully. And I guess that's part of that whole brand identity, and it's also part of what you can get behind as an ambassador. So I wanted to ask you, like, the awesome power of ambassador marketing. Like, what are some of these statistics? Like, what are some of the best applications you've seen of ambassador marketing?
Yeah, coming up with individual statistics, and I have some here, but it's almost like. It's almost too much. Like if you look at everything that it touches, the power of word of mouth, the power of referrals, the power of user generated content, the importance of social media, the increase in bids for and cost per click on social. Like you could take any one of those benefits that I just mentioned and just like Google search, like all the stats, and they all point back to this idea of like turning your customers into your growth engine. And just to share a few that I pulled, for this call, it's like 92% of consumers trust user-generated content and word of mouth more than advertising. The number one source of information for purchase decisions for millennials and Gen Z are close friends. User-generated content converts at 5% higher than like stock or brand created content. There's elements of social proof. All of that is baked into the benefits of brand ambassadors. And even further, I don't think brand ambassadors are, it's not like a hammer and everything's a nail. It's a tool that I don't think replaces traditional channels like paid traffic in particular. I mean, paid traffic is just so powerful, but I think it enhances a little bit of everything. For example, with paid traffic, if you're launching like Facebook and Instagram ads, the importance, how much better ads convert if they have social proof, like engagement under the ad, is it's a meaningful difference. Totally. But you could launch a paid traffic campaign, and then if you have an ambassador team it doesn't even have to be that big. You could have 30 people, you could have 50 people on there, and just say, hey, just launch this ad. Here's a link to it. Please, like and comment, and we'll reward you some points. It's a great way to just enhance every other channel. And so, the time is right now for brand ambassadors and micro influencers. Social is so important. Paid traffic is not going anywhere. Be super clear about that. But also, diversify and enhance, these established channels that you have, and just layer on this layer that's an enabling layer that can touch almost everything.
And would you say an ambassador is kind of like an influencer without the influence, or are there more key differences?
That's a great question. And I think you start to get into a little bit of semantics with that. Yeah. Brand ambassador, depending on who you ask, like if you ask a sales rep for for like a brand that sells to retailers, they use brand ambassadors as like people that stand in the store and, promote like the aisle cap display kind of thing. Brand ambassadors is also a term that's been used to describe like sponsored athletes. And so part of it is how you define brand ambassador, but I would largely agree with that. And, another, just to, confuse matters more, like micro influencer is another term that gets tossed in there. But absolutely, I see, and this relates to what I said earlier about how if you squint, you can kind of see that, a loyalty program, like a little smile widget on your site, like a loyalty program, an affiliate program, an influencer marketing platform. They're at a high level, they're all kind of similar, but they're all separate and disjointed right now. But the same person could theoretically travel across each of them. Like a person could be a customer of yours, today, and they sign up for your referral program or your loyalty program. And then they say, oh, like there's an ambassador program, I'll just sign up for that. And then over the course of the next 2 years, maybe they start taking social media really seriously, and they grow from, 1,000 followers to 150,000 followers. And so theoretically, the same person could travel through across all of these life cycle stages, if you will, or personas. And so with Crewfire, you can actually facilitate that in one platform. That was one of the other insights that we built around, is like, we can incentivize people for doing things that normally it would take a loyalty program on one hand, an ambassador or affiliate program on the other, and then an influencer management platform on the other. We can kind of build all of those into the one platform, so that people don't have to create 3 different accounts. Yeah.
That's very cool. I really loved what you said about it being that insulating layer that kind of makes everything better, because it's like, the way to insulate yourself against, fluctuations within the Facebook platform, for instance, is by creating more meaningful engagement and meaningful connection to your content, whether that's your ads or putting out there. And so that is going to have a tangible impact on all channels if you do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'm interested, like, what really makes someone want to join someone's someone's program, and like what kind of brands is this best suited for? Are there some brands that are just like, oh, you just can't get passionate about specific things, or what's the sort of bar to entry for creating like a really sticky ambassador program?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say this, and I think it's almost intuitive, like my own intuition on what would make sense there. It's generally, it's going to be sexier consumer facing products that have an emotional kind of hook where the customer, it has a real sense of connection to the brand that they're already passionate about. And if they're, one, litmus test is if your customers are already talking about you on social media. Happens all the time, even without ambassador programs. If you're already seeing that behavior, you might, that might be a good indicator that an ambassador program will just formalize that, structure that, and make it that much more rewarding. So we're seeing this in, like, if you think like quote unquote Instagram industries, right? So, beauty, fashion, health and wellness, apparel, cosmetics, fitness and sports, even consumer electronics. These are all categories that have a really strong emotional connection. Beyond that, we're seeing use cases that we didn't originally kind of even think about. So some of our customers are in the advocacy space. So they're nonprofits that deal with either political issues or social issues. And, and that layers into DTC these days, because, as you guys are familiar with, more and more of the DTC brands that are winning today have a mission driven component, and have something that the younger consumers really buy into, the notions of whether it's like 1-for-1 giving or percentage of profit or some sort of, triple bottom line. That's another kind of like emotional, or even at a certain way, not to get too woo, but like a spiritual connection that people can establish with these brands. If that's there, then you really have the makings for an active, thriving ambassador community. Yeah.
Very cool.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So Sam, a DTC brand that wants to build an ambassador program.
Yeah.
What would that look like? From start to finish. How does one go about doing that?
Yeah, great question. And we actually have a guide on this, like top to bottom, which, Kyle, I saw you downloaded the one that we have on our site now. We were in the middle of that. One was from 2015. It's solid, but just like anything you produce 5 years later, you're like, should be better. So we're halfway through this entire new guide on it, but we have other content that's available on our site. And actually I'll make it available for your listeners if they go to crewfire.com/DTC podcast. They can get this free content. And it's all around how to create a program for yourself. And so I'll start by saying this. It's like, it's almost like hiring a, lower level or open sourcing like a Salesforce. And in doing so, you could take it as far as you want in terms of the level of granularity and detail that you want to implement. But broadly, it breaks down into really just 3 sections. And that's going to be your recruitment strategy. So where are these people going to come from? How are you going to get them on board? And we can go into more detail after covering the umbrellas, but your ambassador strategy, your activity strategy. So what are you going to mobilize them to do? And then last but not least is going to be your rewards and your incentive strategy. I can give like a really quick overview of each of those sections, right?
Please.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So in terms of recruitment, I think the primary thing that most DTC brands today and most brands in general are going to want this to center around is going to be an ambassador landing page. It should include, like any other kind of like any other kind of sales page, it should include the benefits. It should be benefit driven. And then like any other job application form, it should include a call out to what kind of persona you're looking for. So who are they? What are they like? And if you call them out on that page, you're going to filter in. Bumble does a great job of this. I mean, we have some content around how to, best practices on setting up these sales pages, but someone looking at the Bumble page is going to look at that and say, this is, I need to be high energy. I need to be outgoing. I need to be social. It's very clear. Once you have that sales page, at the bottom of it, or either behind a CTA or embedded in the bottom, you want to have there's like a sign up form, whether that's like a Google form, type form, a CrewFire application form that you can embed on your site. And then with that as the kind of center of how you're going to recruit, then you can layer in all sorts of like recruitment marketing activities. And now we're just talking about advertising a page or marketing, landing page, which, there's a whole world of strategies and tactics to go into there. We do have a guide to how to grow your brand ambassador army. So DTC or crewfire.com/DTC podcast to grab that. But for brands, if you're a small brand just getting started, or regardless what size brand you are, like one of the best first steps to recruiting is just your existing community. So your existing customer base, your existing email list, your staff, your partners. This is a great place where these people already have an established relationship, and they want to help you succeed. And obviously if they're a customer, they can be incentivized and mobilized to help you in exchange for, we'll get into this in the reward section, but some sort of incentive. So that's how we think broadly about ambassador like growth strategy or starting and recruiting the program. Any questions about that?
No, I think that was super clear. I'll let you go and have some stuff at the end, maybe.
Awesome. Yeah. Great. So after you've, and by the way, I mentioned that part first, but actually when we outline like how to do this, obviously recruiting comes last. You want to make sure that you have these other two elements in place before, opening up the doors. Just like you don't drive traffic to your Shopify store before you have your products and everything and your fulfillment in place. But great. So, but that said, with recruitment out of the way, the other thing we want to focus on is activities. So these are going to be the things that your ambassadors perform to help you grow the brand. And they'll do that in exchange for rewards, which we'll talk about last. With activities, again, once you have this like army or community of ambassadors, it's a really fun brainstorm. And I've had fun brainstorming this of like all the things they can do. We have a guide. It's 55 activities your ambassadors can do to help grow your business. Also at crewfire.com/DTC podcast. But broadly, they fall under a handful of categories, and especially if we focus on online and digital, there's a whole world of offline things they can do as well. But primarily we're seeing a lot of so like in the physical world, it'd be like, sampling or handing out posters or flyers or doing like in-store sampling or something. But for the purpose of this call, I think most people are going to focus on online activities. And in that realm, we look largely at a handful of categories. So referrals and word of mouth. So arming them with affiliate links and coupon codes is a no-brainer, right? Let them drive sales. Let them talk about you in their stories. Let them share talk about you on their blog. So driving referral sales. Second would be creating user-generated content. Super powerful. You can use it if you get the licensing or if you get the what's it called? The release forms. You can use that content in your advertising, converts really well, can save you a lot of time and money and investment that otherwise your design or agency teams go out and create this content. And it generally converts well. Again, as I mentioned closer to the top of the call, like user generated content tends to convert at about a 5% higher rate. So creating user generated content, getting them to share content that you create on their social channels. So whether that's blog posts, announcements, new products, YouTube videos, getting your ambassadors to share that content, engaging with your social posts. So, Facebook, Instagram, even Twitter, they all wait. They all wait and grade every post that's made on their networks. And the more engagement it has, the more people see it. And it's like a cycle, right? And so if you can find a way to get your ambassadors to help, engage with your content as quickly as possible when you post on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, for example, it's going to help you drive more views and show up on the Discover tab, and more of your existing followers will see it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Just a question on whether you more or less, Bill, I guess you're going to get to incentives as well, but I'm wondering, like, on the activities, are you trying to reward effort or results? Like, are you trying to track, okay, you've driven this many users and you get this, or is it more about that effort of putting it out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's like a really weird analogy, but it's almost like, the US Congress is like, should it be like by population, or should every state have an equal vote? Or, so there's 2 senators and there's multiple congressmen, representing each state. So it's, how do you weight, the effort versus the output? Our solution is that points are, so in CrewFire, okay, so when it comes to driving sales, it's like, it's based on output, it's based on how many sales they drive. So reward your ambassadors with a percentage of sales. When it comes to everything else, and we'll talk about how points manifest later, as rewards in our platform, and I'm sure other platforms have different ways of achieving similar things. But, we encourage these rewards to be, as much as possible, like, if they're related to your store or product, you can offer them discounts or free product or free shipping that oftentimes you can still have margin, or just be break even on. And then we also encourage people to brands to get creative with their rewards. So there's ways to create rewards that have value to the ambassador, but don't necessarily cost money to fulfill. And how that relates to your question is, at the end of the day, through something like CrewFire, you have two variables to play with when it comes to incentives. You have that dollar reward that's just based on actual sales driven. And then you have points, which is kind of like monopoly money. You can be a little bit more loose, a little more fluid with it.
And it's kind of currency in that community that you're aiming to create as well. Imagine, like, I've used like Viral Loops and Viper.io and things like this for contests. There is some aspect, which is being able to see the charts of, like, where you're at, in the leaderboard, how rabid of a super fan you are, etc. But I'm eager to know the other ways that you sort of go about building that into a community, because just to rant, like, the thing that you're always trying to do with social advertising, D2C brands, is find ways that you don't just have to put $1 in and get $1 out. And
Sure.
So this idea, get $1 in and get $2 out, essentially, right? Which is constantly having to pay for ads all the time. But I feel like in this strategy, if you can invest in a good ambassador strategy where you're investing in these users early, you're sort of like, they're growing with you, as you say, you're investing in them, you're getting them in early. And as long as you can create a space in your brand for this group of ambassadors, they're going to pay dividends, over time, just massively.
Yeah. So was there embedded in that, was there a question about how we facilitate community, or?
Yeah, I guess that, well, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun with that, with wanting, I'm curious also about, like, how to really incentivize, like, what are the incentivizations that matter?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And they're not 2 totally separate topics. What we see is that community is really what's going to keep people coming back at a higher engagement level, at a higher involvement level. So we'll talk about community. I think that's so important. And I'm happy to show you how we facilitate that internally, or with CrewFire. But real quick, just to touch on rewards. So there's obvious things. when it comes to exchanging points, right? So if you can incentivize people with obviously things from your brand, that's the first place to start. So whether that's free products, discount codes, free shipping offers, it keeps everything relevant and related to your brand. They obviously care about your brand. That's why they're there. And so there's a great opportunity there. You also have a little bit of arbitrage opportunity if it's your brand's products, because, it has, the retail value is the perceived value level. And then your cost of goods is actually, your cost of goods is lower. And so you have an opportunity there to kind of arbitrage that margin. And so that's one thing. Another area of rewards would be like gift cards or coupon codes from other stores. So, we see some of our customers have like putting like Amazon or iTunes gift cards or Spotify gift cards, you name it.
And that comes down to really knowing your audience. That was, I have a friend that was helping with some contests I was running previously. It was just all about like how important it is to really pick, especially for like big prizes or grand, like the largest rewards in your thing. Understand your avatar and what's going to be super to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about like, giveaways that brands do, a chance to win, fly over to, Richard Branson's island to like hang out with, Richard Branson on Necker Island. Like, I mean, it's classic stuff. And brands are already, whether it's like spinny wheels on your landing page or bigger giveaways, bigger, fatter carrots that you can incentivize people to subscribe or to purchase. It's similar stuff, just packaged a little bit differently and for a different audience. And then the one thing that I really encourage all of our customers to think about too is this other category of rewards. And that is instead of products from your brand, which do cost money to fulfill, even if it's less, instead of external products that cost money to fulfill, you can get creative and think about things that don't cost you money to fulfill, but still have value to the user or to the customer. And so that could be things like info products, digital downloads, access to a private community, shout outs and recognition. Like, it's so rewarding. Like I was doing that stuff like when I was street teaming for bands back in high school and college. I remember I did this one campaign for Crystal Method, and they sent me a signed poster, and they shouted out to me on their, I think it was Facebook at the time. This is like 2009 to date myself, but like, and it's Crystal Method also to date myself, but that's still hanging on my wall. That means so much to me, and it didn't cost them anything to fulfill. So there's ways to get creative with your ambassador program so that you're stocking the rewards store with items that have tons of perceived value, or tons of value, not just perceived value, tons of value, but low cost of fulfillment. And that, I think, is a sweet spot to hit. Yeah.
I think that's great feedback. I wanted to just like get some consulting, like, we're using D2C example. You subscriber, I think you've checked out the newsletter. We're talking about building. Yeah, it's awesome, right? We're building a membership tier. You heard it, and we're super excited about it. We're planning a bunch of different kinds of content that we're excited to build out for people, really specific high value content. But even before that, like just taking our most loyal subscribers, turning them into take us through what you would do with D2C if we came over.
Dude, I'm so happy you asked. We don't have any content creators or publishers yet, but to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, I'll give you, okay, so I told you I was going to start a podcast, or I am going to start a podcast, and I've been YouTubing. I'll tell you exactly what I plan on doing that I think you guys could crush. I mean, you're already doing it. So maybe we'll be like, we'll be brothers in arms in parallel here. But oh man, this is such a good idea. I'm excited for if you guys want to implement it. So if you guys built let's call it the DTC army, and you recruited your listeners who have a relationship, you're in their ears, you know how engaging podcast audiences are. You can recruit them to join your team. And when you connect, and then when you connect with guests, brands, you're interviewing, brand founders and marketers, you can say, like, during the podcast, they're telling their story, and then you could ask them, they have sampling budgets. They're trying to distribute products to micro influencers or influencers in exchange for user generated content. You could say, either on the call or after the call, you'll work it out with them and say, hey, by the way, we have this community of passionate brand lovers who create content, and they're going to listen to your story. And if you want, you could seed it with, like, $1,000 or $2,000 worth of products. And you could say, on the podcast, you could say, but thank you so much for listening, everyone. And by the way, if you want to get, 2,000, if you want to earn up to, we're like the, Diff Eyewear is providing $2,000 worth of free product, or you guys interviewed another friend of mine, the watch guy, sorry.
Ronnie Teja Branzio.
Ronnie Teja,
yeah.
You get a handful of sample products from him, and then on the podcast, you say, like, by the way, guys, like, Ronnie's been so generous to contribute, a handful of free product into our community. Join at dtcpodcast.com/army we'll see you on the inside. And so what you'll be able to leverage this community as a promotional community that they can, like, review you on iTunes, like and subscribe on YouTube. You know how important these things are. You can mobilize them to do that. You can have the rewards tie into your podcast guests. And then that army is also another benefit for these brands to come onto your show. And then they are contributing the rewards that serve as the carrot to get the guests, to get the listeners into the community. I want to see it happen.
That's a mic drop, because I love it, because it really combines the two worlds. It's like, we're this meta D2C world where we're teaching all these young, where we're talking with all these marketers about and brand builders about how to do all this stuff. But these people are also ideal consumers and ideal brand ambassadors, because they're young technophiles. They really are consumers at the same time as they're marketing builders. And because of their just the people that you meet in this space, I find are so, social networks are really, they put themselves out there because they're already entrepreneurs. It sort of makes them already like ideal micro influencers.
100%. And just by following your guys' marketing, I know you guys know Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels. And, he's the quintessential consumer of marketing content too. He signs up for every funnel. He funnel hacks every funnel and reverse engineers it. He buys every info product and every book and every course that he can find on internet marketing. And it's exactly what you're saying. And then, he turns around and that education for him manifests itself in his work. And he's, unarguably, I think, one of the best internet marketers alive today. And so, to your point, your audience and your guests are going to be, super brand conscious. They're going to be studying, they're going to be learning, they're going to be active on social, because that's what they need to be in order to be successful entrepreneurs or marketers. Yeah.
Totally. That's awesome. I also really love the idea of kind of hyper incentivizing brands to come and chat with us. I think it's, people are taking time out of their days. And so if we can give them that sort of audience, not just like an actual audience, but also like people tangibly getting their products and sharing them, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. You want another idea kind of like as part of that? We have another, one of our agency customers. I bounced around this idea with her and she's implementing it. So you can create like a community post inside your community and say, hey guys, what products do you love today? What products do you like today? And what brands? And get some feedback there. And then when you do outreach to guests, or potential guests, you can say, hey, like, it triggers their kind of like curiosity and ego, where you can, instead of saying, hey, like, come on our show, it's, hey, we run this community of brand ambassadors, and we asked them what kind of products they love. And they mentioned your brand. They mentioned whether it's, Ritual or Casper or Movement or whatever. And would you like to come on your show, tell your story to our audience? And then if you want, we can also have our ambassador community make a little bit of user generated content for you if you wanted to seed it with some product. That's a compelling offer. Yeah.
And then if we can build up, and we just build loyalty among ambassadors by continually providing them with interesting products that they might actually even be requesting. Yeah, it's that's pretty good, I think. Okay, Kyle, let's do that. Okay,
let's make it happen. I'm so excited to see this in practice. Take it, run with it.
Amazing.
We're gonna.
Okay, cool. Well, that is super valuable. You touched on something that I wanted to get back to a little bit, because we do have a lot of e-commerce. We have a lot of like physical goods, e-commerce, but we have a ton of people in our community that are beverage, that really do think about the whole beast when it comes to marketing. So they're obviously, almost every one of them now has pivoted to, at least 50-50, even the biggest guys really trying to get to a higher number on D2C versus retail. But we have a lot of people that are still playing that retail game. And I'm always interested in talking to them, because they have a mindset that's very different than the traditional Facebook advertisers that are like, we're going to put it out there and Facebook will figure out who likes, we'll put content out there, we'll narrow it down, we'll get our ROAS up. But when people are thinking about like actually attacking like a US rollout, for instance, I was just talking to a friend who's building out a new bar, and they think about building things out very much with like a physical world presence as well as an online presence, and making sure that if you're saturating an area with ads, that people are going to see that product in people's hands. They're going to see that product in bus stops. They're going to like actually in the physical. And I've really been interested in talking with marketers who are really good at marketing that way, so it has that exponential compounding effect, so that everything's more effective. So I wanted you to speak a little bit about like what you've seen done well in the physical world side of things as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to. As you mentioned, as we touched on earlier, a lot of my background was in, we mentioned Red Bull. It was, and especially for the time, I mean, that was like 2007, 8, 9. So that was like iPhone was 2007. So we're like pre-smartphone really like taking off. So that was all real world stuff. We'll touch on that. And then also even before that, I got into this stuff by doing street team work, handing out posters and hanging up like flyers for concert promoters and music festivals, a practice that was, bigger in the 80s and 90s, but still a major part of event promotion today. So those are two examples. And then more recently, you mentioned brands that are, part DTC, but also selling, retail channels possibly. I found a talk from the CEO of Real Good Foods about the importance of community in even brands that are selling through retail channels, because these what do you call like these like whether it's like grocery stores or department stores, more and more they're buying brands that have community built in, and that have that, when they that people are coming to the store. Like I go to Whole Foods to buy my Onnit products, and you can be damn sure that like the buyers out there have that in mind. And so generating that customer loyalty and that community is super important for brands that are selling retail. And then the other component of it is, and then just other ideas about how to move things in the real world. This is a list in a sense. Your ambassador community is a list. With CrewFire, you can access, you have all their contact information, email, phone number, all their socials. You can send communication through CrewFire, but even if you're not using CrewFire, you can use like an email or SMS platform. And just like any other list, that can move people in the real world. So going back to this example from the Real Good Foods, they'll do, when a lot of these like, these brands that sell retail, when they want to test a new product, or when they have a new buyer, the buyer doesn't buy nationally on the first drop. They'll seed it in like 4 or 5 different test markets, for example. And then Real Good Foods can go to their customer base and filter by zip code, and then send a text message blast or an email saying, go here and pick up the product. So brands that are, even if you're DTC and you're selling into retail, or if you're, pure retail, building that customer list and then mobilizing them into stores is, going to be a huge boon to, your conversations with potential buyers. And beyond that, I mean, there's a whole world of things that, once this whole pandemic thing clears up, that you can do on campuses, you can do in cities for sampling products, for setting up, what we call small fires in Red Bull at events, for having some sort of presence on the street, on the ground. Those are all things that you can mobilize your ambassador force to do.
Yeah, I think that's actually one thing that's really cool about your background and what you're doing now is, like, when I think back to Red Bull, I remember the cars, and I remember they would get out of the cars and they'd hand people Red Bulls, and they'd be really trying to sort of fire people up, and in a way it kind of seems like that's what you're now doing with Crew Fire.
Sure.
So I think that's super cool.
Yeah, the cars were so whimsical. Even still, you see them around, you're like, what? Only because you've seen them around for so many years now, it doesn't. But the first time you see that thing, it's like, what the, like, that's different. Yeah, so I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the other hand, it can be, I imagine some of this stuff can be pretty tricky to track and to measure. And so I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about how brands can go about measuring the results of their ambassador programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it depends on the activities that you're having them do. And this has been kind of like my career has been built on, like, building these tools that help these communities and these street team members. Actually, before Crewfire, my first SaaS product is called Simple Crew. My business partner at the time is still running it today, and it was a street team reporting tool. So, like, handing out posters, handing out flyers, like, how do you prove that work was being done? And so Simple Crew was like a tracking tool for that. And they would just take a photo. But it helps to have some sort of system in place, some sort of technology in place, whether that's Crewfire or any of the others. And then you just work backwards from, like, okay, what are the activities that I want them to do? And then how can I build, like, what kind of tooling do I need in place in order to verify that? I will say above a certain scale, below a certain scale, it can be done manually. If you have less than, and I think at around like 10, it starts to get to be a little bit of a headache. So we're talking pretty tight. But you can hack together what we call like Frankenfire with, like, a Google form to accept applicants, and then some sort of email provider or Facebook group for communication and for community. And then for referral sales, there's a whole, I don't got to tell you guys, there's no limit to the number of, like, referral and affiliate, like, undifferentiated affiliate platforms out there that can offer coupon codes or affiliate links. And that's great. And then as you start to get into some of the other social kind of activities that I was talking about, like creating user generated content, liking and commenting on your social posts, sharing your stuff, it's for me, maybe, screenshots, and then how you're going to have the ledger of points, and then how are they going to exchange those points for rewards if you're going to do points and rewards. I don't know that there's a good way to track that outside of, a tool like Crewfire, just to, toot my own horn there. But yeah, like, you can kind of think backwards from, like, the activities you want, and then how might you attribute and reward people for taking those activities. That's how I would go about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to sort of wrap this up here, I'd love to hear an example of an ambassador program that you've seen totally flop. Like, I'd love to hear about that. And then just because we can't end it on such a downer note, we should probably also hear about a really great example that you've seen work really well.
Sure. So I won't say any names, but there was a program that signed up with us, and I would say that this is pretty constant. And I'm sure, you guys are a Pilot House, a growth agency, right? Yeah. And
Yeah.
Like, there are clients that sign up and flop, I'm sure. And I think it comes down to the mindset of the mindset and the expectations of the entrepreneur. In this case, the entrepreneur, like, ambassador programs are not set it and forget it, really, no matter what any other affiliate or loyalty program will tell you. Like, if it's loyalty, okay, if it's an affiliate program and you just, people can sign up and they can grab their code, you're going to see a 2% engagement rate, meaning on average, out of every 100 people that sign up, 2 of them are going to ever drive a single sale. And so that's not, that's not what we're here for. We want to do something like above and beyond. And community is a big part of that. The gamification is a big part of that. But really, it's not set it and forget it. You have to manage the community. It doesn't take much, but maybe, 15 to 30 thoughtful minutes, either every day or every other day. It's like if you were starting a Facebook group, and you can actually carry that analogy. Like if someone signs up, creates a Facebook group, invites 500 people, and then they don't do anything, that Facebook group's not going to go anywhere. So that, the example that came to mind, the entrepreneur just didn't really commit to the ongoing kind of care that this community needs in order to thrive and to grow. And so, for him, maybe there's other channels that'll be, more set it and forget it. Or maybe, nothing against him, but maybe that's there are things that we can do on our end with the software. And then there's things that a third party could do with services that I think, not every entrepreneur or brand owner has time to manage a community like this. And so we think, okay, how can we streamline more and more of it over time with the software? And then maybe either how can we build in services into our own business or work with agency partners to cater to these entrepreneurs that don't want to manage it in house. So it's, it's not all on the customer there all the time. Depends. So that was an example.
I think that's a great example. And I think you really got at something interesting there, that it just requires this sort of, there is an ongoing investment that's being made there. It's not just a cash machine like ads, really, where you're very mechanically pumping out, the content and this ad spend. This is something that you do want to nurture over time.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting.
But dude, let me tell you, I was going to say, even ads, you need to refresh the creative. And so it's not set it and forget it.
No, it's
there's like next to no parts of this business that are, truly set it and forget it. And also I think that sometimes people overlook, or they're not overlooking it, but like the brand equity and how the community is part of that brand equity. And so I think that, what you're doing here is you're giving people a framework and a suite of tools that helps them kind of, add fuel to that part of their brand. And so I think that's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's such an exciting space. Like, whether you're squinting or not, this whole ecosystem as it comes together. And you were mentioning the different services that are part of it. A friend of mine just started a company that's just all about the process of shipping products to people to get their UGC, basically. And then you've got the agencies that are specializing in like white listing and dark posting and just building out those relationships with influencers. It's a super exciting space to be in. What's the best example you've seen someone just absolutely crush it with, and what was the key thing that led to that success?
So we've had a whole range from Crewfire 1.0 days of like teams that have like 8,000 to 10,000 ambassadors, and it's hard not to look at that scale and be like, that's epic. I mean, that's those are some of the big winners. One of our biggest teams has 50,000 ambassadors, and they do anti-teen smoking campaigns. Interestingly funded by tobacco companies. And it's fascinating.
Interesting. That is fascinating.
It's part of the tax that they have to pay for selling like an addictive product that kills you. So that, that's heartwarming to see. We have, but then all the way down, we have small brands. Like we have a concert promoter in Colorado. These guys, I pulled these numbers because they're just so incredible. We have 60 ambassadors, but amongst those 60 ambassadors over the course of a few years, they've done 12,000 campaigns and have generated 65,000 Facebook posts and 70,000 Instagram posts, 925 tweets, and have generated over 140 million impressions. I think it's over the course of 3.5 years. So that's in the event space. We have like a skincare brand that just got ramped up 3 weeks ago. She's seen a 500% increase in her engagement on Instagram. And she went from 0 to 5 comments per post to now 80 to 100 comments per post right out the gate with her Crewfire. So it's really rewarding to work on a product that is really moving the needle for these brands. Yeah.
especially in such competitive spaces where we're gaining differentiation in the skincare space, for instance, is so difficult. But if it's being boosted by this whole level of rabid fans,
Yeah.
you know, it's going to give anyone that edge. It really seems like something that people should be taking a close look at in the next little while. I was even just looking at the new, we always reference My First Million. We love that podcast.
Oh yeah.
And their one that came out today was just all about how, and I haven't listened to it yet, so I don't know exactly the context, but it's like how you all need to look, everyone needs to be looking at MLMs, right? Which is, ambassadors are not MLMs by any stretch of the imagination, but they're, you know, if you squint hard enough, they have the same features, right?
Yeah. And I could see in you guys, by the way, I think I mentioned it in one of the emails that we exchanged, but like, you know, the hustle, and, you know, My First Million is part of the Hustle Network. And I was like, I can see that in you guys. Like, I recognize like kindred spirits in that community. So it's no surprise to me that you're also a fan of My First Million as well. Yeah.
Nice. Well, it's amazing to have you as part of our community here at D2C. And so if people want to know more about Crewfire, it was crewfire.com/DDC podcast.
Yeah. Crewfire.com/DTC podcast. You know, all the resources are there. At Crewfire, you can learn more about the product, and then you can email me, Alan, ALAN, at crewfire.com. And I read every email and happy to help any way I can.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. If you haven't subscribed at directtoconsumer.co, make sure you go there right now. I'm excited. Kyle, I think, was going to take this. We're not exactly sure what we're going to do with this yet. I think we're going to release it. It's good. It's so good. We have to, but I'm excited to produce like a one sheet that's like a real quick hit that has a case study that, I mean, you might already even have this material made, but for our readers, I'm excited to put something together. So maybe Kyle can ping you on some ideas for that.
Sure. I can give you access to like all of the lead magnets and the pillar content that we're establishing. And then I actually thought about this earlier with you guys, but like collaborating on some content I think would be really fun. And here we are.
Yeah, exactly. But even as it relates to some of our brands on the Pilot House side, I think there's a real opportunity there. So we'll make some intros there in the next little while as well.
Love it. Oh man, dude, I'm really excited to connect with you guys, and I think it's the beginning of a great friendship.
Nice, Alan. It all started talking about Pisco sours right before, so maybe it's time we all go have a Pisco sour or
we'll toss a couple back. I'll have to come up to British Columbia.
British Columbia, that's right.
Absolutely.
All right. Cheers, guys. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan.